We are going to be having a panel, and this is going to be talking about how you can grow your revenue with alternative payment systems and web stores. And to head this conversation, I would like to reintroduce Craig, and I'll let him introduce our lovely panelists.
So if we can welcome our panelists back onto the stage. Thanks everyone again for joining this session. Sorry that you got to deal with me again. For those that hadn't earlier, I'm Craig Chapple. I'm the head of content at pocketgamer.biz. With me today, we've got a fantastic panel, and we're going to discuss how to grow your revenue with alternate payment systems and web stores. And we're also going to touch a little bit upon alternative monetization. So yeah, I guess we'll start, if you could all please introduce yourselves. We'll start with you, Faisal, and then we'll work our way down.
Hi, my name is Faisal Bitar. I'm the managing director of Tamatem Plus. Tamatem Plus is a byproduct of Tamatem Games. We are a game publisher based out of the MENA region. We've been in the market for almost 11 years. We've published over 50 plus games with over 150 million downloads. And my responsibility at Tamatem is to support game developers in monetizing through alternative payment networks.
Hi everyone, I'm Steven. I'm a father of 3, so it's a hectic houseful. So yeah, I've been in the payment industry for almost 13 years. So I was there on the ground, enabling payment methods in APAC, LATAM, Europe, and now focusing in Africa. So with Carry First. So Carry First is a Africa First company. 80% of our employees are living and breathing in Africa. So what we do is hyper-localization in publishing, and we build games for low-end smartphones, and we enable payment methods in Africa. So what I do there, I'm the lead product manager for the Gateway team. So my team is responsible for all the payment activities at Carry First. Yeah, so that's me.
Hi, it's me again, sorry. Chris Meredith. I'm responsible for EMEA, working with Xsolla. Xsolla is a 900-strong company. We have worldwide coverage in every single market and pretty much #1 in most of those markets in regards to payment solutions. So keen to share those insights with you today with my fellow colleagues on here as well, and looking forward to having deep conversations about opportunities and monetization. It's a changing landscape, massively so. No more than can be said from here in this wonderful territory. So I think there's going to be an interesting discovery from a varying viewpoints. So looking forward to it.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. So I'm the co-founder and CTO at AudioMob. So we bring audio advertising into mobile games and apps. So we've been growing quite considerably since 2020. We've now onboarded 6 of the top 10 mobile gaming companies and are now moving to expanding into apps.
Thanks very much. So yeah, fantastic panel that we got to talk about these topics. So I guess to start with, I'm sure everyone will be quite familiar with these, but we'll discuss it. So what are the challenges with getting consumers to be able to spend on their mobile games across the MENA region? Because obviously you enable different kind of payment methods, but yeah, so what are the challenges there?
Yeah, so one of the first challenges when you look at the MENA region, more than 70% of the MENA region is underbanked or unbanked, meaning they have lack of access to digital payment methods like a credit card or a debit card. And when you look at Apple and Google, today there's limitations in terms of the digital payments that you can use. So a lot of those, I would say a lot of those segment of people are unable to make these purchases, especially when you look at markets like Egypt, where more than 90% of the population is still using cash. Or you look at Iraq, where credit card penetration is below 5%. So there's really a huge opportunity today of users who are interested to pay, but are unable to pay due to the lack of access to a credit card or a debit card. And that goes back to really the reality of how banks traditionally have been operating in the MENA region, unable to segment to that population and really figuring out how to acquire these users in order to be profitable in terms of their operational model.
You made a good point on unbanked population in Africa. So when we actually look at Africa, so Africa is a mobile-first country. So when you actually look at your smartphone, it's not those smartphones. So in Africa, it's actually low-end smartphone. So basically what that means is that these users don't have spaces on their mobile phone to download apps. So you have to think differently to tap in these markets. So basically, when you actually develop an app, so you have to go back towards the core functionality of your service and enabling the payment. So if it's only white background or blue, so two colors, but if it's sticking towards a core functionality, it gets the job done. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to share. Another thing is that in Africa, you have to consider real-time pricing. So basically what that means is that in Africa, the FX is actually super volatile. So good to note if you take a good example in Nigeria, if we peg it towards the USD. So if you put price points early in the morning, if you don't have a real-time pricing, the currency can depreciate with 50%. So, and that's an immediate impact to your business. So, but it can also fluctuate upwards, of course, and that's a disadvantage for a user point of view. So that's why it is really important to have real-time pricing and focused on low-end smartphone and focusing on unbanked users. So I believe with these three factors, you're able to adopt in the Africa market.
I really think this is a case of access and choice in regards to making sure that whatever market you might be working in and performing in, that you're providing your end consumer or the opportunity for them to be an end consumer with as much choice as possible. So payment solutions, making sure that have local payment solutions at the touch of their finger that they can access and be able to work and interact with in a very easy way is key to this initiative. Also the fact that it's about connections. The whole point of what we do is we make sure that we connect with the best developers, connect with their games, connect with the market, connect with their end consumer, and provide them solutions all along the way. And I think there is enough solutions now in the marketplace to enable that. But as my colleague on to my right talked about, we have to be relevant to localized needs. We have to make sure that we have an understanding, as in Africa, it's a predominant mobile community. So how do we best affect that community? How do we take our messaging to that community? How do we make the transaction as easy as possible to that community? All of these possibilities are now available to us. It's all about how we go direct to consumer. Part of what I spoke to before. There are challenges with that, but owning the relationship with your consumer, owning the purchase at the end of the day with your customer is essential to making sure that there is a thriving life after this. Making that effort to be able to do that is key in regards to what we need to do going forward.
Yeah, and I think for our side there's four things I'd probably touch on. I think the first thing is what everyone's mentioned previously on this stage is that when you have audio advertising, it means that we have a relatively stable CPM. It actually means that we don't have the fluctuations that you usually see as bad as you'll see on a video platform, for example. But I think the second thing, which is super important for regions, is that we also are more lightweight. So in a lot of regions where data isn't cheap, it actually means downloading audio ads and monetizing using audio ads is actually more effective. So it means that you're actually able to monetize your users across a region, despite some places in a particular region being richer than others or having more expensive smartphones than others. And I think the third point, and where it's been really, really interesting for us, is that with developers like Chapple, what they've actually started doing is, because they've seen relatively stable CPMs, is actually making it a pool. So they actually then collect all of the revenue and then give it back to the users in cash payments. And then I think the fourth point I wanted to mention is that we're also seeing something interesting and something we're experimenting in places where currencies are volatile, is then allowing that audio ad revenue to be converted into cryptocurrencies. And that's something that we're actually exploring to see if that is also a way, so it's almost listen to earn in that way, in a more stable currency that doesn't fluctuate, to your point, from morning to evening.
Are you saying crypto doesn't fluctuate as much?
Well, I'm saying USDT doesn't.
All right.
Not Ethereum or Bitcoin, but USDT doesn't.
My Dogecoin would, yeah. I wanted to touch a bit upon the real-time pricing, though. I thought that was really interesting, and I get that. I'd love to just learn a bit more about that. It kind of makes sense from a developer-publisher point of view, but how do you kind of square that with players, and how do you know, if they see prices change within an app, if that's what you were talking about, then maybe they might be unhappy to see that if it affects them negatively. So how do you communicate that?
Yeah, so it's key transparency. As I mentioned, in Nigeria, for example, that's a good example. All of these users are, I would say, FX traders, so they understand the FX game. So if the prices go up, it could be that the pricing is higher than a competitive price. So that's going to be a challenge. So what you have to do is, in that instance, you have to incentivize in such a way, or introduce loyalty points next to the increased price points. Those are, I would say, key aspects what you can do in communicating upfront when the pricing increase is there.
Again, it's the relationship of making sure that you understand what the consumer's needs are, making sure that you can actually communicate effectively with your consumers, and also then you can add value to that proposition. The pricing may vary, but the add value aspect that you can bring into play around those communication points is essential in terms of managing those expectations. None of us can actually manage or control what fluctuations may happen in the marketplace, but what we can do is we can ensure that the relationship we have with our customers is maintained in a consistent way. And part of that is transparency, and part of that is trying to add value to the proposition of what we're actually doing with our customers. So again, it's essential to make sure that you have that relationship with your customers, understand what their needs are, and journey with them, taking care of them along the way to make sure that any fluctuations that may happen are in context with what their needs are, so that they can maintain the user experience that they want out of this kind of relationship.
When kind of communicating with, I guess, your customers across the Middle East and Africa, presumably each country requires a different kind of strategy rather than just an overall branching one. I wonder if any of you could kind of dive into like the best ways to deal with that. Obviously, we've got experience of Africa, Middle East, and well, everywhere.
Let me just touch on. This may explain it or may not explain it. Within EMEA, obviously, which is inclusive of what you just said, we are over 200 separate countries, plus 300 plus languages within that. And we've got various challenges going on within these territories as well right now. So working at a localized level is absolutely essential. And ironically, the fragmentation of what I've just explained is where the value's at. So you need to make sure that you can exploit, understand what those local opportunities are, and provide a strategy that is relevant to that marketplace, be it Africa, be it countries in Africa. The localization of currencies within that will even change at that level. So it is hard. It is very important that you can migrate through those challenges. But I solely believe that this territory, with all of its complexities, provides huge opportunities in regards to how we can contain customers, how we can manage their expectations, and how then we can actually take them forward and grow that customer base. Not sure whether that helps in the answer, but...
No, that's good. That was great. But no, thank you.
Yeah, maybe just following on that point, if you look at the MENA region, there's like 3 distinct areas. You have the Gulf, Levant, and North Africa. And across these 3 distinct areas, they are very different in dialects, as well as in regulation, and as well as in fragmentation. So if you look at the Gulf in particular, you'll tend to see when you look at payments, credit card penetration, especially in the UAE, is much higher. If you look at the Levant area, you'll notice more debit card penetration is higher. And then if you look at North Africa, you'll notice actually cash payments is much higher. So in all of these three different distinct areas, there's definitely a strategy that needs to be focused on understanding who are the local users, what are their local preference, and how do they actually do their day-to-day payments. As an example, Egypt in particular, Egypt has one of the most successful fintech companies that focuses on digital payments, which is called Fawri. Fawri has more than 40,000 kiosks across Egypt. So that's a kiosk network larger than a bank network. And it's very normal for a lot of those users to actually go to the kiosk, make a payment in order to pay their bills or to purchase something online. So that strategy is very different when looking at UAE, where you have very high smartphone penetration and very high credit penetration as well.
Yeah, Faisal, I'm happy that you touched upon Fawri. So I think we made actually good points here. So I want to take it to a level deeper. So I have actually an interesting use case how we enabled Egypt. So basically what we did in Egypt, we enabled all the key payment methods. So Fawri was one of them, pay at Fawri actually, pay with Aman, pay with Masari, and then also Vodafone Egypt. And we acquired one of the biggest games in Egypt, mobile gaming, so PUBG. So in paper, we had everything, right, to activate the market. So we did SEOs, we did paid UA, but the market wasn't converting at all. So we were thinking deeply, what is going on? We had everything in-house. So then we started to thinking, embedding in the culture. So we started to target tier 2 influencers, so not even tier 1, tier 2 influencer, and not specifically influencers specific to PUBG, BG, but a general one. So we target influencers in combination with our graphics team, designing graphics, with Fawri as a local accepted payment method. And we gave that towards the influencer. And you would be surprised, in that moment of time when he was actually streaming his content about PUBG and we offering the product, we quadrupled in sales. Now Egypt is for us actually the second biggest country in Africa, so Nigeria being the biggest one, but in transaction-wise we've surpassed Nigeria actually. So this is what I want to share with you. It's that you have to go like really deep within that culture, try to understand that, and sometimes you don't have to invest in a lot of money to acquire those users. Yeah.
You've kind of answered my next question. I was going to say, what's the revenue opportunity for companies considering alternate payment options in MENA? Kind of first, so how much revenue can they get versus what they have to do? How much they have to invest? You know, is it? I guess ultimately the question is, how worth it is it doing that?
So yeah, I can start. So there's definitely a huge opportunity, especially when you know, just earlier as I mentioned, that there's a big population today that wants to purchase gaming content but is unable to purchase. And there's a big representation of that in the markets that we discussed. As well, other than the aspect of, you know, a big population that is unable, you also have a big segment of users who want to purchase higher volumes than what is typically being sold inside Apple and Google. So as an example, we have a lot of games where we target whale users, and those users generally want to purchase much more than $100 per month, close to $1,000 to $5,000 per month. And generally, those type of users would require different types of payment methods and more of a customized experience and a community experience. From what we've seen a lot of games developers that we've worked with able to increase their pay rates and their monthly transaction volumes by giving access to these payment methods. I think the best narrative to look at it, if you look at PUBG and you look at Free Fire, those are companies that are generating hundreds of millions of dollars outside of the Apple Store and Google Store through alternative payment methods in the MENA region. So that clearly shows that there's a big market appetite, but obviously the most important thing is really understanding, does your game have that local flavor and local touch that appeals to those customer segments?
Got 11 minutes, and I've got 2 topics I want to cover. But so one of them is, I guess, do these challenges kind of bring some opportunities in terms of like a preference maybe for alternative monetization models? So I guess, for example, ads, where you just kind of remove that barrier. And then kind of what trends have you found in the MENA region for ads? So I guess Wilfrid's.
Yeah, I can start with this. I think the first thing, actually linking to the question you asked before, we're seeing 10 to 20% uplifts from people using or integrating audio ads in an incremental way. And I think this kind of taps into something that's very unique about audio advertising versus video advertising. We're not advertising other games. We're bringing brand spend into the ecosystem. And something that's very interesting is actually the MENA region is growing 10% year on year in terms of brand spend. So we're seeing loads of campaigns from STC, from Etihad, from Emirates, MDB, all of these brands looking to get into gaming because they know that that is the audience now. Everyone is a gamer. It doesn't matter age, gender, race, religion, everyone is gaming across the globe. And they're finally starting to realize that, but they need a way to reach that audience without annoying them. And I think that is the biggest thing here, like without affecting retention. Because if we're all honest, no one is actually paying attention to the video ad when it's being played. So, and the brands are becoming cognizant of that fact, and they realize, well, this isn't really effective marketing. I should probably use a different way of doing that. And so this has meant that we've seen a large growth in our year-on-year spend, and our partners, Choueri Group, have been fantastic in the MENA region of helping us with that. And I think it taps into the point you mentioned earlier around our partners, Choueri Group, are able to help with that each local market because they have teams in market across the MENA region. So it actually means that they are getting localized campaigns across different regions at different price points. So yes, the CPM you might get in the GCC won't represent the CPM you might get in Egypt, for example, but the amount of scale you get in Egypt actually ends up balancing out the amount of revenue you could potentially generate. So creates a very interesting dynamic, actually, that we have brand spend that's not cannibalizing your game. We have stable CPMs because audio advertisers are not so fussed about really personalized information. And it therefore means that we have a monetization model that actually is relatively stable, doesn't actually affect your retention rates, and allows you to basically make incremental revenue. So it's actually been one of our biggest success stories, actually moving out here, I think it was like 3 years ago, and actually opening an office and actually expanding out in the MENA region.
Just to support that, I think this is about embracing change. We're in a fluid marketplace. We don't know all the rules, we don't know all the game plans yet, but ultimately they are changing. So understanding what our offering should be to our consumer and making sure we can do that at a localized level. And I think that's the key aspect with all the conversation we're coming here. Even though there's multiple business models, multiple ways of doing monetization, the only effective way is to understand and implement that at a local level. We at Xsolla have had a massive change within EMEA in this last 12 months, and we've seen significant increases by taking that to a local level, taking the customer effect down. We focus now as much on new developers, new marketplaces, and the integration of those guys and what their needs are, as much as we do as the enterprise. They are as important, and even more so in certain ways, because that's where the future growth is going to come from. That's where the new initiatives are going to come from. So it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we support the local growth of opportunities through the development community to support that.
Mm-hmm. And just kind of finally on ads, I think the answer is yes, but I guess, and it depends on the country, but are kind of ads kind of culturally acceptable across like the Middle East and Africa? Because some players despise them, some players are absolutely fine with them. Is there an issue there, or?
So I think in terms of our engagement statistics, I think we see on average there's around each user there's around 7 engagements with ads. I think it really does depend what you're advertising though. And I think you really need to tune into that. And I think what we've seen is the engagement is always the highest on when it's artists, when it's music, when it's big brands. People are really interested when it's like STC. People are really interested in engaging with those creatives. So we've seen it really does depend what you advertise. Like people are more interested in an ad or brand when it's also engaging, also when it's funny. So like when we have like celebrity voices, people immediately engage with that more because they say, oh, this influencer, I remember their name, or I remember who that is. So we've definitely seen that, and I think the way you do it is becoming very important. I think for all of us in life, in terms of, I think any kind of ad really needs to be better than what we were doing before. Because let's be honest, I think what we were doing before is quite lazy and not really as creative as it could have been if you really want to engage users. So we're definitely seeing the more you engage, the more there's a familiar voice, the more it's actually not interrupting them, the less likely they are to skip. So to give another statistics to end on is we see around a 11% skip rate on our skippable ads. And if you think about that is basically the user saying, well, I don't really care enough to tap that skip button, I'll continue to play the game. So that kind of shows the user behavior is saying, for the most part, the acceptance is there.
I want to quickly touch upon kind of alternative marketplaces and web shops via time. I guess just the general question is, how big are alternative app stores in the MENA region? Are they worthwhile? So I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, in like say Europe or the US, there's limited opportunities with an alternative app marketplace because everyone's kind of stuck with the app apps are on Google Play. But I'm curious if that's different here, or you just disagree with me entirely.
Yeah, it's different here. I think it's quite popular when you look at web shops or marketplace for general gift cards. So this is quite popular in the MENA region and has been for a number of years. I think it's still early on for other game developers to really penetrate that. But we're definitely seeing that trend. We're seeing a lot more game developers now looking at these marketplaces and these web stores to enlist their in-game items. And again, it goes back to, I think the value proposition there is the payments, is because a lot of these web stores or marketplaces have access to local payment methods. If it's in Saudi Arabia or if it's in the UAE or other markets, we're definitely seeing a rise. And we're seeing a very similar trend now in China, where that has been really a frontier. Now a lot more game developers are looking at China and trying to replicate what's happening in China.
Also, the beauty of this region is it's not constrained by history. Then some of the issues and the challenges we have in Europe and in the US are the fact that we've got traditional opportunities that are restricted because of how we go to market. That's changing. Alternative payment methods, alternative web shops. We've been doing web shops for now 10 years, and we've seen a massive change between where it was to where it is today. And it's still a grey area in regards to being, when you look at statistics from Data AI, they don't actually forecast what that actually is.
Yeah.
And I gotta think it's in the realms of approaching 20%. Yet that is not forecast within what the future vision of what this market is worth. But again, this marketplace now, where we are here, is open. It's a virgin territory in regards to how are the best ways to monetize without any of the constraints that we faced before. And that's a real value point. That's why we're spending so much time and effort in creating solid foundation points here, because we don't have the constraints of history.
Yeah, so like specifically with web shops, obviously there seems to be actually a big opportunity there. You were saying about the percentages. obviously with Xsolla, you know all the data, but like I was reading Playseeker's financials, for example, and they make like 25% of their revenue now just from direct to consumer. So that's kind of crazy. I guess for the MENA region and web shops, do you have any best practices? And again, how worthwhile is like a specific web shop in the region?
Yeah, so as Tamatem Plus, we support game developers in really enlisting their own items on Tamatem Plus. Tamatem Plus acts like a marketplace where we set up separate web shops for each game developer. On those web shops, game developers can enlist their in-game items and then can offer a very seamless redemption experience for their users, where the purchase happens on Tamatem Plus, but the in-game item is then redeemed automatically inside the game. As part of that, we also offer more than 40 plus alternative payment methods, from cash, wallets, direct carrier billing, and domestic card payments. In addition to that, we're also helping game developers in expanding to Latin America and Southeast Asia. But there are other opportunities out there that are definitely opening up. Obviously, Xsolla and what Xsolla offers, Carry First as well, has a proposition there in the region. I think it's still early in terms of where we're seeing more and more players coming into the market, but it's definitely growing, and there are now choices for game developers to explore.
So I think Faisal and Chris made two really good points. So the marketplace side, and then also from D2C side. I want to touch upon also one particular use case also from a client perspective. So clients also have in-game purchases, right? So if you're able to tap towards that, that's also really interesting. So I think key payment methods are mentioned here as well. So mobile money, one of them, and digital wallets as well. So every client is striving for that seamless payment experience. So it's becoming a buzzword, I would say. So if we tailor that towards mobile money and digital wallet, what that means. So I'm a user browsing on Call of Duty Mobile, for example. I want to purchase in-game, so I don't want to get out of the game, the gun what I actually wanted to buy. So I select mobile money. So what happens then? Ideally, you want to have a deep link immediately towards the payments app. So MTN for this example. So the user does a strong customer authentication there, and then the user goes back towards his game and playing his game as usual. But unfortunately, not every payment gateway supports this deep link functionality. So I want to share some okay-ish solution there as well. So what you can do is then, when the user actually selects the gun as a purchasing, you automatically launch your web browser, so the user web browser, and then deep linking or then triggering the payments app to do the strong customer authentication. It's not ideal, but it works. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. So I want to address that use case as well, because it's also important.
We are just out of time, but a quick takeaway.
Very quickly, we've got a whole host of best practices we can share afterwards, but it is against that choice factor, and we've got 700 solutions in this territory to be able to do that. But it's offering your consumer that choice and then guiding them through that process of integration from the WebShop solution all the way through. But again, and I'm harping on about it, understand your consumer, understand what their needs are, and navigate them at a local level.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Please give a big round of applause to the panel. Thank you.